Accuracy and critical strike chance are important mechanics in Path of Exile, especially if you're playing an attack build. But if you haven't played Dungeons & Dragons, they also seem a bit strange. You might notice yourself missing or not having a 100% chance to crit when you feel like you really should. On the other hand, if you have played D&D before, these might seem a lot more familiar since PoE's accuracy system is essentially lifted straight from D&D, where you're rolling against an enemy's AC and you do have to confirm your critical strikes. This is why you can have a 100% chance to deal a crit strike, but a lower effective crit chance if your accuracy isn't at 100%. So today, I'm going to get into the details of accuracy and crits in Path of Exile, start by talking about its history and the involvement in Dungeons & Dragons, and then give you some numbers and some best practices for dealing with accuracy in PoE. So to start with, grab your d20s because we're going to talk Dungeons & Dragons. Now I know this might seem like a tangent, but it's very important to understanding how accuracy, evasion, and critical strikes interact in Path of Exile. In Dungeons & Dragons, when you attempt to hit an enemy, you make an attack roll. This is done by rolling a d20, and then combining the number you roll on the dice with your base attack bonus and any other applicable modifiers. This will get you your chance to hit, which is then compared to the enemy's AC or armor class. If it's equal or higher, you hit them. If it's lower, then you miss them. But sometimes you get lucky, and you roll a 20 on your dice. This means you automatically hit, and may deal a critical strike. Now some weapons have different crit ranges, but let's just pretend for now that it's only a 20 on the dice, since that makes it nice and simple and easy to follow. Rules lawyers can file their objections down in the comments below. In the case of a nat 20, you will automatically hit the enemy, but you have to make another roll, which is referred to as the critical confirmation. You roll your d20 again, you then add your BAB and other bonuses, and compare this to the enemy's AC. You didn't have to do this off of a first roll, since it is assumed that you hit with a nat 20. This time, if you would hit them, or if you would deal a crit strike, then you deal a critical strike, and you get to roll your damage accordingly. On the other hand, if this confirmation would miss, you hit them and you merely deal normal damage. And where there's good luck, well, there's also bad luck. Sometimes you'll roll a 1 on that d20, and in this case you experience what's called a critical failure, which works a lot like a critical success in that you have to make a second roll for confirmation. If you roll high enough to hit the enemy, then you miss, but nothing else bad happens. If you don't roll high enough to hit the enemy, you confirm your crit fail, which usually means you drop your weapon, or if the DM is feeling creative, some other nasty things happen to you. But why is all of this important? Am I just padding up the watch time to get more ad revenue? I can see where that argument might come in, but no. In this case, the reason I went into the mechanics of D&D is because Path of Exile uses the exact same system for attacks. When you attack an enemy, there's a combat formula which essentially rolls your accuracy, combining in crit chance, against the enemy's evasion. This is why for a long time, your accuracy and crit chance could not go over 95%, and why it can't go under 5%. This represents the nat 20, which is a 1 out of 20 or 5% chance, and the nat 1, which is again a 1 out of 20 or 5% chance. But a lot's changed since the early days of PoE. These days, you can get a 100% chance to crit and a 100% chance to hit. So let's simplify the formula down a little bit and give a few specific examples, since I've already probably talked enough numbers that most people's brains have melted. Your accuracy rating is compared to the enemy's evasion rating. This determines your chance to hit. If you would deal a critical strike, then that crit strike must be confirmed. So if you don't have a 100% chance to hit, your crit strike might be downgraded to a normal hit rather than dealing all that nice juicy critical damage. So if you try to hit an enemy, there are 4 possible results. The first is that your attack rolls lower than the enemy's evasion. They evade the attack, and you do no damage. The second is, your attack rolls high enough to hit them, but not high enough to deal a crit, so you deal normal damage. This is of course only possible if you're below a 100% chance to deal a crit strike. The third option is, your attack rolls high enough to crit, but then you fail the confirmation due to having uncapped accuracy. Again, you deal normal damage. And finally, your attack rolls high enough to crit, and then you roll at least high enough to confirm the crit, so you deal critical damage. If you have a 100% chance to hit, and a 100% chance to deal a crit strike, then Situation 4 will happen every time you attack. This is of course the goal, since we're PoE players and we love seeing those big numbers and just watching bosses melt. Now, if you've been enjoying this look at the mechanics of accuracy and critical strikes in Path of Exile, then do be sure to leave a like on the video, as it really helps me out with the YouTube algorithm and will help other people find this video and gain access to the information. If you want to see more Path of Exile and action RPG content, then sub to the channel and ring that bell to be notified whenever I upload. And if you feel bad for using an ad blocker and me not getting any money for you watching this video, then you can always go support me directly on my Patreon for as low as $1 a month. I guarantee you that $1 is going to be way more than if you had watched all of the videos I released in the past year. But now, let's get back to what this means, and some numbers that you should aim for. Starting with the fact that accuracy is extremely vital if you're playing an attack build. You need to cap your accuracy rating in PoE. If you want a simple way to do this without really thinking too much, then just look at the number that PoE gives you. As long as the enemy is of a proper level, which is 84 or higher, PoE will tell you what your chance to hit is. If it's below 100%, you need more accuracy. On the other hand, if you're a control freak, or you want to ride the razor's edge precision of exactly as much as you need, the number you're looking for is 3026 accuracy rating to have a 100% chance to hit against normal level 84 enemies. But going over that could be rather helpful. For example, if you're blinded, to have a 100% chance to hit, you'll now need 3444 accuracy rating. And if you're trying to hit evasive enemies, an enemy type that started out fairly rare and is becoming more and more common with new league mechanics, then you'll need 3877. Unless you're doing some accuracy stacking shenanigans, you probably won't need over 3877, as it's unlikely that you'll both be blind and fighting against evasive enemies. But who knows? This is PoE, and it's always possible. When it comes to crit, you again want to get a 100% chance, but there's two ways to scale crit. The first is to scale base crit. This is displayed in-game through stats such as the crit chance on your weapon, or attacks have plus percentage to critical strike chance. This is also displayed through effects like Brittle or Assassin's Mark, where enemies have a flat chance to receive a critical strike. This base number is then multiplied by your increases and reductions to critical strike chance. The reason that's important is if you get a 100% increased critical strike chance, this does not mean that you will always crit. This means that whatever your base number is now doubled. So if you had a 5% chance to crit as a baseline, and then you get a 100% increased critical strike chance, you'll now have a 10% chance to crit. This is why it is often far more efficient if you're trying to get a 100% chance to deal a crit strike to scale the base number rather than your increases. And you'd need almost 2000% to take a 5% base crit weapon all the way to a 100% chance to deal a critical strike. Whereas if you can double your weapon's base crit, all of a sudden it becomes significantly easier, and with effects like Brittle or curses like Assassin's Mark, it gets even easier from there. Of course, when it comes to accuracy, there are also cheat codes. For example, if you wanted to use the Vagan's Craft, which says hits can't be evaded. In Path of Exile, you never actually miss unless you're just bad at aiming your attacks. But assuming the attack connects with the enemy model, it will hit if they don't evade it. If the weapon has a mod that says hits can't be evaded, they can't evade, so you don't need accuracy rating. Alternatively, if you're not worried about crits at all, you could go for Resolute Technique. This says hits can't be evaded, but you also cannot deal critical strikes. In many cases, it's a very good idea to use Resolute Technique at League start, but by the endgame you'll want something else, since scaling crit is a great way to double or even triple your damage. Another method could be to play a champion and take Worthy Foe. This says that enemies taunted by you cannot evade attacks. It might feel bad with slower attacks, since you do need to hit them to taunt them on hit, or use a Warcry to automatically taunt everything around you, but unlike the previous methods, if you're playing in a party, and one champion taunts an enemy with Worthy Foe, all party members will now hit that enemy, since the enemy themselves cannot evade, so your accuracy rating doesn't matter. And this being PoE, there are plenty of other ways to build accuracy or negate the need for accuracy. These are just a few examples that might be helpful. If you've ever played an attack build in PoE and wondered why your attacks seem to just do nothing, or if you've played a cast on crit build where you're missing a few % accuracy and wondered why it felt so bad, or maybe you built your crit around Bottled Faith being up and then Bottled Faith falls off and it feels terrible, well, hopefully this explanation of accuracy rating and crit strikes in Path of Exile will explain some of why it's felt so bad in the past and what you can do to fix it in the future. And now I only have one question. What other mechanics in Path of Exile confuse you? And do you have any other examples of a Path of Exile skill or game mechanic that's taken from another older game? If there's anything you can think of, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to put them down in the comments below, Or join the Discord, where you can ask questions, get build help, and hang out with the community. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. They're awesome, and they get to show it by having their name on screen in the credits of all my videos. So if you want to see your name here, be sure to check the link in the description. For more general gaming content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts, and if you want a water bottle or a cool shirt, I have a link to my official merch shop in the description. I hope you learned something today, and I hope to see you again sometime soon.